Star Fam, welcome or welcome back. My name is Laura Black, and this is Blacklight Astrology. Today, I'm coming to you with my take on the Virgo new moon of 2025, and there are actually two new moons in Virgo this year, which is a little bit rare. If you're unfamiliar with astrology, we usually have one new moon in each sign and one full moon in each sign throughout a single year. Every once in a while, it falls in just such a way that the new moon will happen in the earliest degrees of a sign, as is the case this week. And then when it comes around to the next new moon cycle, it falls at the latest degrees of the sign. And quite literally this year, we have the first new moon in Virgo at 0 degrees, which is the first degree of a sign, followed by the eclipse season. At the end of the eclipse season, we have the solar eclipse, the new moon, again in Virgo at the final degrees. And I will be doing a whole set of videos on the eclipses upcoming, so stay tuned for that. But today we're just going to focus in on this new moon because there is plenty to talk about just in this lunar cycle. So, happy end of Leo season. As of the day I'm recording this, it's August 20th. The new moon is occurring on August 22nd, which is a Friday here in the Pacific Northwest. Do adjust that for your time and location on the planet. It will be happening at 11:06 p.m. on Friday evening if you're around these parts. My goodness, this is quite a new moon. We got a lot going on. A Virgo new moon is always like back to school moon, It's get your ducks in a row, clean it all up, go back to the dentist, the doctor, get your appointments squared away, get back on your fitness routines if you fell off during the summer or winter, depending on where you are, festivities. It's cleanup time. You all know that song, that like kindergarten, at least in the States, song, clean up, everybody, everyone. I always think of that. My sister was an elementary school teacher for a while there, and yeah, that song rings in my head. This Virgo new moon is very much saying clean up, but there is a massive plot twist with this new moon, and that's mostly because we have a square to the planet Uranus. And this is really the first time in most of our lives, unless you are like older than 85 years old, this is the first time for many of us to ever experience a new moon in Virgo that is squaring the planet Uranus. At least Uranus in Gemini, I should put it that way, because maybe you experienced it when Uranus was in Sagittarius many years ago, but here we are, first time with new moon in Virgo squaring Uranus in Gemini, and that's extra interesting because both of those signs are ruled by the planet Mercury, which at the time of this lunar cycle, or at the time that this new moon perfects, Mercury will be still in the sign of Leo and still just finishing out the post-shadow period of the Mercury retrograde that we just experienced. So, if you are not familiar with astrology and how these cycles work, we spend, when you add it all up, we spend like almost half the year basically in Mercury retrograde related periods. Mercury retrograde happens three, sometimes four times in a single year. Remember 2020? We had four Mercury retrograde cycles that year, and they last for 3 weeks. The actual retrograde period, where from our perspective on the planet, it looks like that planet is going backward. Of course, it's not actually going backward, right? But then the 10 to sometimes up to 2 weeks, 14 days prior to and following the actual retrograde cycle is what we call the pre-shadow period or the post-shadow period. And sometimes they can be just as glitchy, especially in the earliest and the final days of those pre and post-shadow phases. So we're looking at Mercury at 12 degrees of Leo, and when Mercury paused to go retrograde in the first place several weeks ago, it was at 14, 15 degrees of Leo, and so it's still in the final days of this post-shadow period. We're still sort of locking in and kind of integrating the lessons of this last Mercury retrograde. So this is a really significant placement, or this is a significant ruler of this lunar cycle. And it not only rules the new moon in Virgo, but it also rules the planet that it is squaring, which is this whole new vibe that we're all experiencing since July 7th of 2025, Uranus in Gemini. How you doing out there, Geminis? Or any of the mutable signs, really. Gemini, Sagittarius, Pisces, and Virgo. If you have planets, particularly in the earliest degrees of those signs, but really anywhere in those signs, you're on a whole new adventure with Uranus in Gemini. Uranus has been, sorry guys, I'm a Gemini. I'm probably going to say Uranus, Uranus, Uranus a different way every time. I just like it. I like the variety, you know? It has been traveling through the sign of Taurus since 2018, since the early months like March, April, May is when it really got locked in, through Taurus. And so all the fixed signs, Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius, and Leo, have been experiencing this massive shakeup from these very hard aspects of Uranus, the Great Awakener, to their fixed planetary placements. Now, the mutable placements are in for the shakeup. The good news here is that Uranus, which likes to disrupt and make sudden changes and shifts and cause, you know, automatic awareness. It's like rapid downloads, and it's like sticking your finger in a light socket and getting this shock wave of information or awareness. Well, the mutable signs are kind of into that. Not all, not purely, but Gemini, above all, kind of loves that sort of rapid thinking, shift in perspective, that liberated mindset. You know, it's Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury, is the one of the lower octaves of Uranian or Aquarian energy. Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury, is how we would really put it. It's not that the signs are higher octaves of one another, although you could argue that. You could debate that Aquarius is a sort of higher octave of Gemini. They are both air signs. Gemini is the first, and Aquarius is the last, the most evolved, so to speak. So that's sort of present with that too. But Uranus in Gemini, Uranus being the higher octave of Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, it kind of fits. And look, I'm a Gemini sun. I have Mars and the North Node in Gemini. I'm all kinds of Gemini energy up in here. And while it has certainly had its challenges, I'm really enjoying this shift in perspective. My Mercury in Taurus gets very, very stuck in its mindset. So I'm really, really enjoying the liberty, the flexibility, the sudden upheaval, the shift in perspective that I really, really needed. Now, Uranus in Gemini squaring the new moon is in and of itself a whole massive shakeup. This new moon says things are not going to go according to plan, which is unfortunate in the sense that Virgo loves a plan. Virgo loves a checklist. They love to have all their ducks in a row, as I said earlier. Virgo wants to know exactly how to do it. They want to have their checklist, they want to have their playbook, and they want to go according to the details. It's like, this is the right way. This is what is appropriate. This is what is necessary. We don't want to skip a step. We want to be sort of scientific about it. Well, this Virgo new moon says you can't. It says surprise. And especially those of us who have planetary placements or say angles or something in these earliest degrees of the mutable signs, there's going to be a surprise. There's going to be a whole shift of information. There's going to be a big shockwave, a big shakeup. And that's not necessarily Virgo's favorite thing in the world, even though it is ruled by Mercury as well. Gemini energy, air, which is associated with mental faculties, and it's just thought, it's just communication, it's just chatter, has no problem kind of shifting, you know, wherever the wind blows. Virgo, not so much. Virgo can get messy, but then they have a lot of shame or guilt about it, and they got to clean it all up. And there's a neurosis that comes with having things out of order, out of sorts. It's not their favorite thing. I love you, Virgos. You guys are some of my favorite people. One of my my very best friend on the planet is a beautiful Virgo sun with a huge Virgo stellium. I love you, Erin. But yeah, they have a way. And this new moon is going to say, hey, you're going to see what's not working with the way that you've been doing things. And this is asking us to prepare for the unexpected, which is a little bonkers, right? How do you prepare for the unexpected, which is sort of my tagline for this new moon? But we kind of gotta. For a lot of us, I think this is going to be seeing, you know, eyes wide open, as is something I'm going to be saying a lot for the next several years as Uranus goes through Gemini. What is working in our routines, our plans, our ways of doing things, and what is not. It's going to be showing us where we are gripping to control that we just can't anymore. It's going to be showing us the steps that we need to take that we're going to have to change very rapidly and probably keep on sort of upgrading and problem solving and rearranging as we go along. I think of my, oddly enough, a ballet teacher I had once. Beth McGill, I love you so much if you're out there in the universe. I hope you feel my love for you. She used to talk about, I don't even remember why she was bringing this up in a ballet class, but she was talking about, when you're in the kitchen and you're cooking and it makes this huge mess, and then not only are you exhausted from cooking whatever, but then you have this mess to clean. She goes, that's why I clean as I go, clean as I go. And she used to, I think she was trying to demonstrate something physical in this clean as you go sort of thing. And I never forgot about that. Clean as you go. That's such a Virgo archetype. But Virgo squaring Uranus is saying there's going to be surprise messes, surprise twists and turns and shifts in the plan, and you're going to have to rearrange the steps and figure it out and clean as you go. The really big issue of this new moon is that we have a yud, a finger of God. And look, if you know me, if you follow my stuff, if you've had a reading with me and you have a finger of God, you know how obsessed I am with them. Those of you who know me very well know that this year I am going through a yud activation myself. And by that I mean when you have a finger of God, such as I've outlined here in your own natal chart, there is a very, very specific plan for your life, at least in the portions relating to anything involved in the finger of God. And the fate will show up on a specific timeline, and it's only when an outer planet passes over the apex or the release point, which is the exact opposite end of the apex, the thing being pointed at, or the opposite point to that, to the thing being pointed at. Now, it's different when it shows up in a lunar cycle. This is not necessarily, fate for just anyone. There is a sort of fated tone to this lunar cycle, but it's going to really be affecting the people that have planetary placements in these early degrees of Aries, Aquarius, Virgo, and again, the mutable signs Gemini, Sagittarius, and probably Pisces. And that's just because those are the hard aspects to where this finger of God is pointing. And we're talking like the first 5 degrees. So check your chart. I have several clients in my head right now, some of my favorites, some of my regulars. You know who you are. I love you. Who have these planetary placements in the earliest degrees. And yeah, this is pointing at you. There is something very specific that needs to take place. So, if that's you, if you have these early degrees, check your chart, notice the house where you have the earliest degrees of Virgo. You might check the houses of the earliest degrees of Sagittarius and Gemini and Pisces and just see what themes are coming up for you. Although, with this kind of signature, you likely don't even need to look at the charts. You probably already know. You won't know what's going to happen. Nobody does, because this is Uranian energy hard squaring the new moon. It's one thing if the Uranus was conjunct the new moon, if it was blended, but this is a square aspect. And as we say in Hellenistic astrology, it is of the nature of Mars. This is something that's going to bring up conflict. It's going to burn, it's going to sever, it's going to motivate, it's going to light a fire under your ass. This issue that emerges, and it will be surprising. It will be tossing. If you put all your eggs in one basket, it's going to toss them out, and half of them are going to break. It's that kind of energy. It will be it's going to trip us on our path. That's the plan, is for the plan is for things to not go according to plan under this new moon. One of the main themes that I'm seeing in this new moon is as we are approaching the actual Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which will take place on February 13th, depending on where you are in the world, right around Valentine's Day here in the States of 2026. Saturn and Neptune will be perfectly conjunct at the 0 point of Aries, the very first degree of the entire zodiac. It's a huge deal. It's always a big deal when those two planets come together anyway, but at 0 degrees of Aries, unheard of. Unheard of, and such a reset for everyone on the planet. Now, Saturn and Neptune and Aries, there's a world to talk about within that conjunction. But one of the main themes that I'm seeing is the quest to rebuild the true self and find divinity from within. This signature is one of the reasons that we're seeing so many people become very, very religious. A lot of people are like nosediving into their religious philosophies, studies, communities, whatever it may be. There's a lot of fear coming up, especially when we had Jupiter, the magnifying glass, squaring Saturn that happened just earlier. It happened in August of last year. It happened a little earlier this year, this summer for us in the States, depending on where you are. It was just a few months ago. So Jupiter was expanding that sense of fear, one of the key words of the dark side of Saturn. But Saturn is really reality. I've been thinking about that lately, though. I kind of want to take that back. Okay, so the old way of thinking about things in, let's say, the age of Pisces, which we could debate all day about when the age of Pisces ended and the age of Aquarius began, but if you ask me, it at least began by 2020, if not back in the 60s. And some people would argue it started 600 years ago. Nah. We can have that conversation another day. But let's say in the age of Pisces, we understood Saturn as being reality, ruler of Capricorn, the physical realm, the most evolved and the most powerful earth sign. And here we are on planet Earth. It was dealing with what is and reality. However, Neptune would have been, as the ruler of Pisces, Neptune would have been sort of the illusion, the mystery, the fantasy, the imagination, and the artistry, the connection to divinity. I always nickname it in first readings with people the third eye, just to shortcut our way there. But I love Rick Levine. If you don't know Rick Ravine, guys, go look up Rick Ravine. Rick Levine. Now I'm going to say it wrong for the rest of my life. I kind of like it. I wonder what he would say about that. Good old Aries in the 11th house, Rick, likes to say that we used to think Saturn was reality and Neptune was the illusion. But now, in the age of Aquarius, we're evolving to understand that Neptune is the reality, that everything is energy, nothing is even real, and Saturn is the realization that there never was one. I kind of love that idea. I love to tinker with that a bit. So, however you want to slice it, these two coming together causes a little bit of a dissolving of old structures. And while it was squaring Jupiter a little earlier this year, it was the dissolving of old paradigms. Big paradigm shift for everybody in the world this year, right? Crazy massive. And there will be another in another 10 years that based on a cycle that began in 2020 under the Jupiter Saturn conjunction. Every 5 years, they come into a hard aspect to one another. So right now we experience the square. In another 5 years, there'll be the opposition of Saturn and Jupiter. Another five after that will be the waning square. And finally, they will become conjunct again 5 years after that. So we are in the first shift, the first big kind of forced paradigm shift for everybody politically, spiritually, philosophically, understanding the system, the power, and what we believe, how we understand truth, how we get our truth and our information. That's all Saturn Jupiter's little synodic cycle. Well, Saturn Neptune coming together is a reset in the mythos in the world, how we make meaning, how we believe in certain things, the structures that we provide for the ineffable, the mysterious, the artistic, the divine. That's all encoded in Saturn and Neptune. Well, on this quest for the new self or the true divine self, or looking for divinity preferably from within, according to my personal philosophies, although a lot of people are seeking the God and the divine outside of themselves, which cult survivor that I am is, in my opinion, not the best way to go about it, but this is up for debate. Um, this little signature happening under this new moon as a part of the finger of God is massively important. And on the other end of the base of the finger of God, we've got Pluto and Aquarius. So with this new moon in Virgo, I think we are seeing under this finger of God, the main theme that I'm hearing about in my clients' journeys is suddenly seeing a whole new perspective with the square to Uranus on the steps that we're going to need to take to build this future self, this new self. If you want to get really woo-woo with me and a little bit trippy here, and why not? Neptune's involved. Let's go psychedelic. Saturn in Aries says, rebuild yourself, says, who am I? That is like the quest for Saturn in Aries. Just ask, who are my favorite examples lately? Joe Rogan. Just ask Will Smith, who am I? How do I assert myself? Well, Neptune is this sort of antenna looking character. You see it? This pitchfork? It's like this antenna. It's reaching out, it's opening the subconscious of ourselves to try to allow divinity, allow source energy. I don't know what you want to call it. You pick your name for the Tao that cannot be named. To let that energy flow through us as mere mortals, to tap into something divine, whether it's for art or spiritual message or whatever it is. Neptune is us trying to tap into it as we rebuild ourselves. The new self that's connected to something spiritual or creative or mystical or mysterious. But Neptune can dissolve structures if we're not careful. Now, Saturn and Neptune, Neptune is this portal through time when it's conjunct Saturn. Saturn is Father Time. Neptune can be, it's not like a wormhole in the sense that the north and south nodes can be like literal wormholes. I mean, just ask anybody experiencing an eclipse. You know that under eclipses, you're probably going to hear pop cultural references to the last time that the eclipses were in that alignment, 19 years back. That happens to me every eclipse season. I'm like, oh, what's this song? I loved this song back in the day. When was it? When did it come out? Oh, 19 years ago, the last time the eclipses were happening where they're happening now. Go figure. Happens all the time. Look for that this eclipse season. Kind of fun. It's referencing back to what, 2006? 2006-ish. You'll hear references to movies and music and whatever. It'll just come through because in my woo-woo side of thinking, the Gemini that I am is always a little bit of a skeptic, but one side of me goes, oh yeah, totally, it's a wormhole, it's a portal through time, and it's like the music is, blasting at us through these speakers of the eclipses way from the past. Saturn isn't a wormhole like that, but he is Father Time. And Neptune in Aries on Saturn, it's like your future self, the dream of the future self that you want to become, is calling back to you and saying, look, if you really want to step into your power in the future, if you want to help transform society, one of the many ways that we could examine Pluto in Aquarius, here are the steps that you need to take. Square to Uranus says, here's what's working and what's not. And here's how you need to shake up your routine and do things completely differently than you have ever done them before. So I'm really excited about this new moon because of that. Now let's get through Friday and see if I still feel that way after whatever shakeup comes into my world. I don't have any planetary placements in the earliest degrees of the mutable signs, so this probably won't be like a massive shakeup in my life, but you never know. Never say never, especially when Uranus is involved, especially with Saturn Neptune. Things are not as they seem. We just don't know. But it is quite an interesting new moon, and it being the first of two new moons in Virgo, I think it shows an attempt from many people to get their ducks in a row and start to clean up and start to move forward. But I think this square to Uranus is like, oh, the apples are getting shaken out of the basket and half of them are bruised. And now we have to do, we have to rearrange and go back to the store and get the other apples. It's all this like problem solving, fix it, pick it up, shift it around. Things are getting jumbled. So as much as we want this to be like the back to school energy, it's gonna be like, those nightmares you have before the school season starts and you wake up and it's like 3 weeks before school, but you wake up 2 hours later than you normally would and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm late for school, and you think you missed the first day or something, but you didn't. Or the first day arrives and you feel like you're still on vacation and you're late on the first day. Something along those lines, like things are not going to go according to plan, and we're going to have to prepare for the unexpected. Ah, it's an interesting one for sure. Now, there are benefits building underneath this new moon. One of the other things that we're getting a glimpse of for the future is this little talent triangle, these little blue lines right here that I've just colored red, between the outer planets, Saturn and Neptune, Uranus, and of course, Pluto. Now, that little minor grand trine, you might have heard it called, or talent triangle, or triangle of potential, there's a bunch of different names for that little guy. That is a promise from the energy that with a little bit of effort, we can go a long way. It's like this huge boost. There is a talent available to us within that. If we tap in, the sextiles say you got to put in a little effort, I always say that a sextile is like a sink, a kitchen sink that the faucet is turned on to like medium. But the trine, this long blue line here, 100 and oh my gosh, I almost said 180 degrees, 120 degrees. This guy is like a fire hydrant hooked up with the hose on full blast and is just shooting the energy through. So there's a little effort required here, but with a little tiny bit, the universe gives us this massive boost and just throws us on our way. Because this configuration is coming into play by the outer planets, which are more generational, more societal. They're not personal planets to us. Of course, they are personal to each of us for where they're transiting over our own charts and the houses that they're in for our personal charts natally. But when we're seeing a transit with all the outer planets involved cohesively, supportively, could that be any better? In fact, this is the precursor to the long foretold great basket of support that's coming into place at the end of 2026, or like August, September, it really begins to form. And it will be exactly these planets where they are now. And Jupiter will have come along and popped into the earliest degrees of Leo, which I'm really excited for. It's going to be right on my moon and Venus, right on my midheaven. Hey. And that basket of support, you can, if I take away all my red nonsense here, you can kind of see it. I'll outline it for you. It's here. There will be an opposition from Pluto to Jupiter will be almost where it'll be just past where Venus is now. And then it goes down. Whoops, that was bad. It goes this way over to Uranus and that way back to Saturn and Neptune. Can you see on its side this basket with a little crissity-crossity right here? So we've got two talent triangles and an opposition, and that is this like woven basket of energy. And because it is literally all the outer planets, we could argue Chiron's not involved. Is he a planet? Is he a dwarf planet? Is he a comet? Is he an asteroid? He's never really been clearly classified, honestly. Who knows? He's a strange little character, that Chiron. Don't we love him? But all the other outer planets are involved here, right down to Jupiter, or will be. And that basket of support is said to be a shifting moment for humanity when we finally realize that not only we can, but we must sort of redistribute things. A lot of people suggest a redistribution of resources or a redistribution of awareness and coming together as a world community or smaller communities in our own local areas. That something is tremendously supportive for massive societal transformation under that basket of support. I am here for it. It's the same astrologers who also predicted things like the pandemic. So, we're looking forward to that kind of shift. But this new moon has the sort of precursor little peekaboo glimpse. It's like the dream of what could be with the North Node in Pisces. On top of that, under this new moon cycle, we have a grand water trine. Now, this is slightly debatable. What we really have is a nice trine from Jupiter. Hey, we love it. To the North Node in Pisces, of which Jupiter is the ruler. So this is like kisses all over from the universe. It's just that Black Moon Lilith is involved, but here I am using mean Lilith, which we like to use more for transits anyway, right? So this isn't true Lilith. This is, and if you're unfamiliar with Black Moon Lilith, she is a mathematical point on the moon's orbit that is at any given moment the outermost apogee of the moon. So it's the farthest out point of the moon's orbit from the planet Earth at any moment. And so that's a wackadoo mathematical point. It shifts all over the place during transit. So as astrologers, we kind of average it out so that we can see a clean transit of Black Moon Lilith. Now, Lilith, true Lilith, let me pull it up here so you can actually see. True Lilith will actually be at 27 degrees of Scorpio at the perfection of this new moon. So it's not exactly in a grand water trine with Jupiter, but it does start to cultivate a grand trine, though not a grand water trine. It's mixed. It's a trine from Lilith at 27 Scorpio over to the North Node in Pisces, or more accurately, Saturn and Neptune in Aries. And there we have fire, so a little mixed. And that goes down to Venus in Cancer, which is at a perfect trine to Lilith. So either way you slice it, there's some kind of triny or grand triny energy going on. And, grand trines really, really allow supportive energy to flow through. I always have to clarify with clients a grand trine, we're taught often in astrological studies that a grand trine is like magical, positive flow of energy. And I think when people hear that, we automatically go, oh, it's positive energy. The good side is flowing. I didn't say that. You hook a fire hose up to a fire hydrant, and if it's got a clean water source, great, that's clean water flowing through. But if you hook that fire hydrant hose up to a sewage pipe, you got some crap flowing through. You got some shit to deal with. And it's flowing just as strong as it would if it was hooked up to the fire hydrant with pure water. So this isn't necessarily like, yes, it's so good for everybody. It's just flowing. It's not what it's doing, it's the way that it's doing it, or it's what we do with it. So while there is a really lovely trine-ish, water-ish, trine-ish energy that wants to cultivate more compassion, more peace, more of a sense of spirituality, more attunement to spirit and source. This could just as easily be flowing escapist energy. It could be flowing secrets. It could be flowing, under the surface manipulations that nobody's really talking about. And I don't want to read it that way. I would vastly prefer the empowerment of Lilith, reclamation of power through scorpionic authenticity. That's the way I would want to read this, but never say never. There's 8 billion plus different ways to access and utilize this energy. There are as many ways as there are human beings. So just be aware that there's potential to really tap in to something magical, something spiritual, something healing, but just as easily. Things are not things are not necessarily clear with a grand water trine. They can be. It can feel like pure clarity, like floating effortlessly. It can be like, have you ever floated in a sensory deprivation tank? That that shit's amazing. It's it's floating in space, floating in nothingness. It's so well, just try it. And that can be how a grand water trine feels. If we look at it as the kite that is potentially here when we include Saturn and Neptune in this like grand trine, that's not purely a water trine, although it kind of is because Neptune's involved and it rules Pisces, but it's in Aries. When we look at the kite formation, we're apexed by Pluto in Aquarius. Hello, weird, wild world of AI, and the strange, bizarro future is here, and we're not really sure what to do with it yet. And it's based by Venus in Cancer, which is a lovely placement. Ugh, you gotta love Venus in Cancer. People with Venus in Cancer, they just know. They just know how to love. They just know how to, they can sense what you need, you know? Which, by the way, in Cancer is ruled by the moon, which is at the apex of this yacht. So this is quite a locked in, complex new moon in Virgo. And remember, it's just one of two. Now, as far as eclipses go, this is not an eclipse, but it is the opening of eclipse season, meaning this new moon is the seeding point where we can set intentions. And if you're into like manifestation or whatever it is that you do with this energy, this is a lunar cycle where it's great to do that sort of thing. Spend some time planning. Just remember that things are not going to go according to plan. Be ready, prepare for the unexpected. Spend some time setting your intentions, planting your seeds, figuring out what kind of garden you want to grow from here, figuring out what your health needs for improvement. And don't expect too much of yourself right out the gate. We do have a second new moon in Virgo that will be even more potent for really understanding the steps we need to take, although that will be an eclipse, and we don't try and control during eclipses. This is highly debatable in the astrological world as well. Some astrologers hold that we don't manifest during eclipse season, and I think there's validity to that in a sense, because eclipses are like these sort of chapter markers, these sort of like karmic cleanup cycles that we all go through every 6 months. And they kind of go back and reflect on the last 6 months and automatically swipe things into place or out of place from, whatever your choices were over the last 6 months. They get kind of locked in and things are shown that need to begin or end in eclipse seasons and cycles. And we can sort of feel out of control if we're trying to control and make things happen or make things end. So we just let go during eclipse season. You just allow it. That being said, Gemini that I am is also like, okay, but you have to live your life. And if you're a person who likes to plan and likes to, manifest or likes to really try to figure things out and be on top of your game all the time, hey, live your life. Eclipses are going to do what they do anyway. And so if something's not meant to work out for you or it's meant to begin for you, it's going to happen whether you try to force it or not during an eclipse. So I personally like to chill and let go during an eclipse. This is one of the reasons you're never going to catch me at an eclipse festival. No, thank you. I would rather be quiet. I would rather do what the animals do. I would rather not be even in the moments leading up to, I know at like eclipse festivals, people get silent and watch it happen and it's amazing. I would rather do that privately. I would rather do that in my own quiet energy. I would rather feel into the creatures around. I would rather be in tune with this phenomenon that humans have been in awe over for as long as we've existed. I would rather pause in the darkness because something is being eclipsed. Something is not clear during those moments and in the days leading to and following after. So personally, I prefer a quiet eclipse experience. I prefer to keep an internal sanctuary and keep it sacred. No matter the signs involved, no matter the astrology, I've never experienced an eclipse where I really want to be out there being wild and crazy. One time I did almost go to an eclipse festival and then my friends backed out at the last minute and I was kind of bummed about it at the time, but looking back I'm like, no, that was the move. We floated on a river instead very quietly and like it was way better. Yeah, that's the way I want to do things. But that's me, so you do you. This new moon is the opening lunar cycle to the full moon lunar eclipse that will take place on September 7th with the full moon in Pisces on the north node and the sun on the south node. And then 2 weeks thereafter, September 20th or around thereabouts, depending on where you are, that will be the south node solar eclipse with the new moon at 29 degrees of Virgo, the final eclipse. And while again, I wouldn't necessarily, personally, I don't like to push things forward. I'm kind of more of an improviser and a go with the flow character anyway. I have no personal planets in Virgo. Um, I wouldn't recommend like trying to make things begin under that eclipse. Let them begin if they want to. Let them come into play if that feels right for you. I know for myself, I'm starting a program the following lunar cycle after that. And that new moon will certainly be putting me, okay, let's get this routine down because I'm starting this program, this initiation, la la la. So it's going to be the opening 2 weeks to get me ready for the launch of this program I'm participating in. So this isn't eclipse time yet. But it's kind of funny because the few situations in astrology where I, as an astrologer, would feel comfortable and confident calling out fate or the feeling of fate would include a finger of God, which we have under this lunar cycle, anything being at the 29th degree, the last degree of any sign, which we don't have any under this lunation, but perhaps you have 29-degree planets in your chart. So check for that because those planets have a feeling of fate carried with them. It's very karmic. It's very full of potent energy, the best of and the worst of that planet in that sign in that house. Mhm. And eclipses. Eclipses feel like fate. They feel like destiny. I might prefer the word destiny, or it's like a short-term fate. It's like a fate based on our decisions over the last 6 months. It's like a little immediate, it's like instant karma, but just a slight delay, like a 6 month delay, rather than like years or lifetimes of karma accruing and playing out and being burned off. This is like, oh, okay, eclipse season. Let's review these last 6 months and how you been behaving. And let's like set things into place or shake things out of place as a result of all your choices. That's kind of how I feel about eclipses, but they do have that little feeling of it's a feeling of fate. Some things can feel forced. But Destiny is a preferred word for me a lot of times when it comes to the nodes. Even with eclipses, it's a little closer to fate with eclipses, but then when the nodes are involved, it feels like destiny, as in you still have power and um, what's the word? Agency. That's the word. That's such the religion I grew up in. That was like, you have free agency. That was such a big thing. Except if you choose wrong, you're in big trouble and you aren't a part of the group and you're out, that sort of thing. Oh, so it's agency, huh? Manipulative agency. But free agency is involved with the North and South node. It's just kind of like bowling with the borders on. Like you're gonna get your bowling ball down this lane and it's probably going to hit at least one pin because it's gonna hit those borders and just go in that direction with the nodes. But it's not necessarily like somebody is carrying the ball down there for you and giving you what's it called? Now I'm going to golf and being like a hole in one, a strike. There we go. I know my sports. So destiny, as in things are guided in a general direction, but you get to choose exactly the degree, exactly the angle you're taking in that general wash, rather than this is what it will be. That feels more like fate to me. Or that's the way I use those words. I'd love to hear what you guys think about all of that in the comments below. Do you have a finger of God in your chart? Do you have experience with a yod activation? How do you feel if you have planetary placements in these earliest degrees of the mutable signs? I want to hear about it. I want to hear your experiences, even if you come back to this after the eclipses are over. Or I would love to hear when I share those videos, if you would share your eclipse stories with me. I love collecting stories from these kinds of cycles. This is my favorite game. All right, everybody, I think that's about everything I have for you today. Wait. Laura, you're not done yet. Hi. Okay, I'm back. If everything looks different from where it was earlier, it's because it is. I was cleaning this up and I was going on to the editing stage, and then I remembered there are a couple of things that I wanted to say about this new moon that will really become more important, more imperative in the next new moon in Virgo. They're really important in this one too. I want to state it here clearly. One of the things that's coming up so strongly with the South Node in Virgo is looking shame dead in the face. And I think it's something that most people shy away from. If you've ever listened to the work of Brene Brown, read her books, if you've ever deconstructed an abusive religious upbringing, if you've ever left a cult, or if you've just ever dealt with shame, you know that it's a really icky experience that most people don't want to deal with. Most people don't want to look at their shame. They would rather hide from it or meet the expectations set upon them, do what the shame tells them to do. I'm speaking personally from a life of experience of being just totally entrenched in shame. One of the signatures of Uranus square the new moon is trying to get us to begin the process of liberating ourselves from shame. One of the surprises or the realizations that many people are going to have is, how do I engage with information? Particularly through media, online in general, but how do I engage in any information? Just conversations with friends. Should I be taking this content in or not? It's like, this is like a content diet, is what it looks like to me. Starting to realize, like, wow, the things that I watch and listen to and read and talk to people about, are they saturating me with more fear? Are they leading me into fear-based delusions and illusions and, getting kind of mixed up in myself and even like becoming somebody different based on fear patterns? How is it affecting society? Or maybe I should do a little fast from this kind of content or information just to see how my nervous system reacts. Uranus being the nervous system. So I wanted to throw that out there. I think that's hugely important under this lunar cycle, is liberation from shame and understanding all forms of input as a part of our our nutrition. It's like Virgo, is very much concerned with purification, the process of becoming more pure, more cleaning things up, making improvements, making those small gains. And I think Uranus in Gemini squaring this new moon is starting to bring a huge alert to many of us, saying like, hey, it's not just about the food you put in your body or the things you do, the output in the gym or on the yoga mat or, on your bike or whatever it is that you're doing to move your body. That's not the whole of fitness or wellness. Maybe we should reconsider the thoughts we're thinking. Maybe we should reconsider the stories we tell ourselves and the content we're ingesting or the content we're creating, all of the above. I feel like Uranus in Gemini is going to force us to just think about wholeness and wellness and our routines very, very differently. That we're no longer able to think of the non-physical things that we engage with as not being important. We can't just be impartial about that stuff anymore. That everything we're experiencing in life, the sounds, the sights, anything that's stimulating or affecting our five senses, is a part of our health and wellness, including not just the five senses, the physical realm, but including our minds. And I think this new moon is forcing us to consider this grand water trine might be like the sensory deprivation tank. Like, what would happen if I just take a step back from all of that noise and I rearrange all of the input and output in my life? Where do I want it? What do I need that to look like in order to get where I'm trying to go, in order to become who I am trying to be in the world? So I think that's a really significant message under this new moon. Thank you. Wanted to throw that in there. And now, have a great day. See you in the next one, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Your likes, your comments, your sharing these videos with anybody you think might appreciate it. It always helps boost the channel, makes me feel so good to be growing our community. Thanks for participating. If you would like to book a private session with me, I offer everything from mini readings, 30 minutes long, to full 2-hour sessions on pretty much any kind of chart reading that you would like to have, including relationship charts, solar returns, transits and progressions, etc. So go check out my website, black-light-astrology.com. And thank you so much, and I'll see you again in the next one. Bye.